Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the AWE Weekly Podcast. I am here with my co host, Christian Dominique. Christian, great to have you again. Today, we are talking about another very important topic for the world. What is it, Christian? Courage, right?
It's the courage specifically to find and build real connections. So, how can we really connect, and why is it important to connect in the first place, Mark?
Well, it's super important to connect in the first place. It provides us with happiness, helps fulfill some of our basic social needs, and I think the the importance of it becomes apparent after people feel like they've been deprived of it. And I think the fact that so many people nowadays are spending most of their time online, the social deprivation aspect of this is becoming extremely palatable and concerning. Like, when you look at the amount of movements and online cults that are starting around people who feel lost and confused, and they look for some sort of inspiration. This is why it's so important to form social connections.
I agree. It's something that we perhaps take for granted, but once we don't have it, it becomes apparent that it's a fundamental human need. We had some of the pandemic restriction kind of help people realize that we have a sense of community. We should be with each other,
Mm,
not separated from our families, communities, coworkers, in ways that have been a little bit detrimental, or a lot, to say the least. A lot of studies that showed the impact of those restrictions of human connection. And we don't have those now, which is good, but we do have still some remnants of that. And we have some, bad kind of ways of living in some aspect that focuses on sometimes social media or technology as a way to communicating, and people are
mhm.
finding it harder and harder to have real human connection and conversation. Have you seen that as well, Mark?
Absolutely. It's something that I see a lot in my practice, especially since I work with a lot of digital nomads and remote workers who often present a lot of similar symptoms regardless of where they are in the world. And it's a trend, right? That a lot of people think that they can evade from because, they're so unique. And, look at me, I'm going to Bali with my computer, but it doesn't really matter where in the world you are with an internet connection. If you're not, um, getting these needs met. It doesn't matter if you're on the beach in Bali or you're in Berlin or in Montreal, right? You're still in front of computer isolating yourself. At the end of the day, that doesn't make a difference what sort of weather you have outside, right? So these patterns replicate are replicable across the entire planet, wherever you are.
Agreed. And it seems simple to, when we talk about human connection, right? You're born, you have parents, you have peers, you see people every day, probably.
Mhm.
But why is it becoming harder to actually make real connections?
I think there's two reasons. One, I think that people are perhaps there's more demanded of people nowadays, especially with work, and it's hard to find time for connection. Either you go to the gym after work and you're working out, and maybe you see some strangers, or you have your office colleagues when you're at work, or if you're a remote worker, it's right going to a cafe. But a lot of times you're just surrounded by strangers, essentially. So that makes connection very difficult. And then the second part of it is that perhaps we've become desensitized to how do we actually start conversations with people in the first place, right? We watch movies, we consume digital media, but I think it becomes harder and harder to actually. So we've talked about this on the podcast before, but the difference between experiential knowledge, right, and theoretical knowledge. So just a quick analogy. I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself here, but you can read a book about bodybuilding, but it doesn't mean you're a good bodybuilder, right? You still won't know what to do when you go into the gym and you pick up a dumbbell and you don't know how to use it, even though you've read like books and watched videos on how to do it. Likewise, you can also read a book about how to approach a woman at a bar and watch a ton of YouTube videos and have all the theoretical knowledge about how to do it. But the moment that you set foot in a bar and you see an attractive woman and you try to do it, then it's an entirely different experience, right? So all of that theoretical knowledge is actually not useful in that context because you still don't know how to deal with these uncomfortable emotions that the book didn't prepare you for, right? So all of those things come up in that moment. You feel weird. So essentially, there's a gap, right? And this is something that we see a lot today because information is free. It's easily distributed. There's no barrier to entry for anybody to just post their opinion online. So you see tons of information out there. It's all free. It's how a lot of people get um, leads for their online businesses. They offer free content, but the consumption of free information doesn't equate always to doesn't translate to having real experiential knowledge of how to do the thing, right?
Yeah, we talked about in one of our earlier podcasts about, and it was your quote, right? Self-help books or content without action is self-harm, right? So it's good to have the knowledge, but we're here as therapists and coach to help people to actually do that. We know that there's a gap. 70% plus of people know what to do, but they don't know how to do it, or they don't have the courage to
Right.
do that. Right. And that's when we're talking about the element of courage. Courage, again, is one of the 7 C's framework of happiness that we've built. And courage is very important. We'll talk about it more today. And it means actually what you talked about, being able to sit with this uncomfortable, unfamiliar, perhaps, emotion, feeling that, well, I know what to do or what I should do, but I'm not really able to do that. Well, one of the first thing is to, really have the purpose of, being sure that this is a good thing to do. And then when you have that, then you can build the courage to actually do it. And once you do it a few times,
Yeah.
it becomes easier, right?
I think most people know what they need to do in their lives to improve their lives, but the reason, yeah, like what you're saying, why don't they do it then, right? And there's a number of reasons. You get distracted by other shiny objects, other priorities come up, and yeah, you don't prioritize. And I think the biggest one that you touched upon is like, what's the big why? What's the reason, right? What's that emotional component? Because you have the outcome, let's lose 10, 15 pounds. Okay, how do I do it? Well, I eat less, I fast, I don't eat bread, I go to the gym every single day. They know all the stuff. It's not a knowledge problem. Most people know what to do, but they don't do it because again, there's that missing why component, the purpose behind it, for some reason they forget and they fall back into their old bad habits.
Well, we did quite a bit of scientific review mixed with our knowledge and talking to clients and organization around the world,
Hmm.
um, to help you guys to figure out why. Why is specifically today we're talking about belonging, social connection, real
Hmm.
connections. Why is that important? Well, let's dig into some of the science. And also, you talked about going to the gym. We had a podcast beginning of the year. What are the new year, new me mottos? Are we still doing that in late March now? Have people been able to have that why so present in their life that every day they wake up and they know why, right? Today we'll talk about awe as well. Today, not just the company, the word awe. Right now I'm seeing beautiful snow, and as I'm having this podcast, I'm experiencing awe at the same time because I know it's an important factor to integrate in my life. This morning, it's one of my brother's birthday. First thing I did early in the morning is take a phone call and call my brother and wish him happy birthday, right?
Yeah,
Not message him, not saying, hey, actually calling, right?
right.
And those are small things that create real connections. And
Mm,
people probably know they could or should do that, but they're like, really? Am I going to bother that person? Is it okay?
mhm.
People are at school, in the metro, at work. Maybe you talk to your colleagues, but strangers, oh, it's becoming very difficult to talk to strangers. And it doesn't have to be in a bar, like you mentioned, just someone sitting in the public transport with you, someone waiting in line for something with you. Hey, how are you doing? Right?
Right.
People are not doing that really, unless you live in a small town, perhaps. But we should all have communities like that, and we'll talk also about community today.
100%. Yeah, I think there's so many opportunities out there for people to form connections, yet they don't do it. They probably know they should. And there's a lot of, like I said before, a lot of patterns around human behavior and why people are refraining from it. Why are we moving in this direction? There's ways, some conspiratorial reasoning about big tech monetizing our own attention and making it difficult for us to actually communicate with each other. And we're seeing this especially in teenagers, right? Teenagers in schools. I spoke with somebody today who has kids going to a private school, and she said, yeah, there are a lot of initiatives by schools, by private schools, by public schools to take the phones away, to get the kids to do it. All right. But taking the phone away is like another form of control, right? And you ideally want the kids to decide for themselves that they want that connection, right? Because perhaps they don't realize it.
Yeah, we also can talk about The Anxious Generation, Haid's book that
Yes.
prones, the difference between phone-based childhood and play-based childhood. So we'll talk a
Hmm.
bit about how play is important for children and adults as well. And
Yeah.
play is a form of connection, one of the best ones. So
Yeah.
let's dig into it. Any first research or comment you want to bring into the table?
Yeah, maybe we take a step back just for 1 second, and,
Yep.
we're talking about courage. Well, opposite of courage, is fear, and what does fear mean, right? What is and fear is something very visceral. It is a natural reaction, usually originates in specific parts of the brain, like the amygdala, right? But is not an instruction all the time. Yeah, you do feel fear when the tiger jumps out at you in the savannah, but why do you feel a fear about approaching an attractive woman at the bar, right? That fear, it's not like you're in imminent danger or of any kind. Why do people feel a fear, especially who work in sales? Why do people feel a fear about picking up the phone and calling somebody, right? It's like there's no imminent danger there. And so courage is acting despite the feeling of fear, right? And anybody can do it, but only some people do it, right? So feeling of fear isn't a sign of cowardice, but it's a biological prerequisite for courage, right? If you aren't afraid, you aren't being brave, essentially. So there has to be fear in order to have courage in the first place, right? But it's important to distinguish the fear as a warning versus something that's an actual barrier.
Very well said, Mark. Fear as a prerequisite to courage. That's the way it is, and so people can try to detach themselves a little bit from that visceral fear and analyze it as something that's
Yeah.
exciting. And actually, there's also some studies that show that these same brain pathways of fear and anxiety are the same brain pathways as excitement. So if you're able to reframe your body's feeling of fear into excitement, right?
Yeah.
I want to do that, then you're already a step ahead.
Yeah, I mean, think about it like this. Something I do with a lot of my clients, they'll tell me that, I'm really afraid to do this thing, or they use the term anxious. And anxiety is an interesting one because it is something that can very quickly turn into excitement based on the way that you interpret it in your body. So 95% of the time, when somebody's anxious, they'll tell me, I'll ask them, where do you feel it? And they'll say, um, I feel it in my chest. My chest is very heavy. Or I'll feel it in my stomach, right? It's like where the term butterflies in your stomach comes from. Um, and I'll say, like, okay, when you observe this, what is inherently negative about this feeling itself? Well, there's nothing negative about it. It's just a feeling, right? It's like tingling on your skin. It's just a feeling in your body. So what is it that makes it actually negative? And I argue that the thing that makes it negative is actually the interpretation, right? Because you have an event, right? You have an exam, and you have a thought about that event, and then you have that feeling in your body, and you're like, oh God, see, this is proof that this is really bad, right? And that's what the reaction to that avoidance, because I want to reduce that feeling in my body, is what causes this behavior, the anxiety to actually prolong.
And in fact, we also know, for instance, you talked about interpretation. One
Yeah,
of the special ways that people describe love or infatuation, especially as at the teenage years, is butterflies in the stomach, right? So
yeah,
butterflies in the stomach can be interpreted as fearful or as exciting, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
same thing with sweaty palms, right? My
yeah.
palms are sweaty. I won't do Eminem on the podcast, but
Palms are
um,
sweaty. Was arms are heavy. My mind's spaghetti.
so talking about play, I was suggesting, in a classroom setting that we should do karaoke in classrooms, karaoke
Yeah,
in podcasts, and in cars, of course. Yeah, and those are ways to build connection, bringing
yeah.
humor, bringing play, creating real connections, even at a distance.
Mhm.
That is more than superficial. That is more than mandatory interaction. It's real connections, right? And I wanted to go back to fear. I did write a few LinkedIn posts and an article and blog that are coming out on both our websites, so you can
Mhm.
check them out next week at awewellness.org, AWE
Yeah.
wellness.org, or awdigitalwellness.com, or both websites will have this content. So it's a pretty fun blog and article that talks about this book called The Courage to Be Happy. So again, on the theme of
Yeah.
courage, and it talks about Alderian psychology. It's two Japanese writers that look at European philosopher on education and psychology, and he talks about four types of fears. So one is the fear of being disliked. One is the fear of being imperfect. One is the fear of losing control. And the last one is the fear of taking full responsibility of our own lives. What do you
Mhm.
think about that, Mark?
Full responsibility of our own lives. I really like that one. Deciding the life that you want, that's the first step. What were the other ones again?
Fear of being disliked,
Fear of
of
being
being
disliked.
imperfect, and losing control. And
Yeah.
losing control is probably the basic human
Yeah.
fear of uncertainty as well, right?
I mean, yeah, those are the most common ones that I see amongst people, right? Perfectionism is a huge one when you talk about procrastination. It's like wanting to have like the perfect result and not getting started because you're afraid of like not having the perfect result. Fear of being
And
disliked.
and and
Yeah.
just to talk about perfection in the real world, when we talk about real connections, um, the fear of being imperfect means that you don't create connection, right? So taking the courage might mean that you do something imperfect. You might say the wrong thing. You might do the wrong thing. You might
Yeah.
yourself might, but you're still building a connection, right? And actually, people um, really actually love imperfect people. People don't like perfect people. You might think that watching a
Yeah. Yeah.
film,
Yeah.
you want to see the perfect video with all the makeup and lighting and everything perfect, but actually in real life, people like real people and they're imperfect, right?
Man, look at the most successful podcasts in the world, like, Joe Rogan Experience. It's just 2 guys, like, people having conversation, and I think they gravitate towards those big podcasts rather than, like, the bite-sized, bite clips of, on NBC, CNN, Fox News,
It's too
people perfectly.
polished. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
too polished because people don't actually talk like that to each
yeah.
other, and I think people don't connect with that, and it just um, yeah, it's, like, sterilized and just not very natural, and so people want, like that kind of, like, signals, like, the need for human connection. They want something that feels real to them, right?
Mhm.
They don't want something that just feels, like, sterilized and perfect, right? So um an imperfect question or imperfect statement, that's kind of it shows that you're human, essentially.
Exactly. So we can bring in, one of the studies that I looked at in details today, which talks about awe. So we mentioned awe. So this
Awe
talks
therapy.
about awe therapy, but it doesn't have to be in a clinical therapeutic setting. And it's a Turkish group, uh, Tanham et al. 2022. very good paper for clinicians or otherwise. And I'll break it down for you guys. Clinicians, psychologists, or educators, or regular people that want to have and should have more awe in their lives.
Yeah.
And the abstract mentions clearly, we believe that awe should be used more in therapies for the elevation of public health and life satisfaction. Those are big things. One thing that can help public health and life satisfaction is awe. And that's one of the reason our company is named Awe. That's why it's one of my 4 pillars of happiness, the 4 A's. And there's many reasons why awe is useful. We won't go into all of them. We'll focus on the ones that are related to our topic, which is connecting and belonging, right? So if we go further in the paper, there's a few quotes that I highlighted for you guys. Social isolation. Did we just talk about that, right?
Yeah.
Is always a possible risk due to the massive dependency on digital communication forms, right? So research shows exactly what you said, Mark. This has been documented. And what can we do with it, right? So our experiences make people less self-centered, so less ego, more humble, more
Mhm.
pro-social, and it also lead people to pay more attention to the needs of others, so
And not to harm.
altruistic behavior,
Yeah.
and to not harm
Any other
other
individual.
individuals, right?
Yeah.
And there's many references on that. And we can conclude by saying that also appreciation of life in general, the value of life, is linked to awe. And appreciation is, again, one of the 4 A's of happiness,
Yeah.
which are awareness, part of awe, acceptance, appreciation, and awe, right? So this paper confirms everything that we do is awe, is science-based, and helps people. There's more sentences and highlights that I wanted to share concerning this paper, so you don't have to read it, although you can and you should. Uh, Individuals from higher classes reported less frequent awe experiences compared to lower class, right? So more money, more problems, more money, less awe, or more social class, that's interesting. What do you think about that, Mark?
So the highest dispositional awe in Iran reported the lowest, and the difference between them was large. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't surprise me, to be honest. Unfortunately, it doesn't surprise me in today's day and age that we are missing awe, right? Because it's hard um, to induce that feeling in front of a screen, right? Putting your your kid in front of a iPad and showing them the Grand Canyon on YouTube is not the same as actually taking them there, and that was the whole premise that this company that we started was founded on, is that that is the missing element in a lot of people's experience, right? Um, Let me read the second part. Individuals from higher classes reported less frequently experiencing awe compared to individuals from lower classes. Interesting. That's I wonder why. Why do you think that people from higher classes experience it less compared
Because
to.
they become jaded, because they become cynical, because they
Uh-huh.
don't take because they're too busy counting their money or their ego, right? And people with less actually appreciate more.
They're more grateful for
Yeah.
more, and okay. I had a very super surface level understanding of that. I was like, well, wouldn't the higher class people be able to afford the trip to the Grand Canyon, and the people from the lower classes
Yeah, but
would.
maybe they're at the Grand Canyon, having to do a business meeting, taking a selfie, and not enjoying the Grand Canyon.
I see. Okay.
Hmm.
So anybody from any social class can be appreciative, but how do you unlock awe in the experience?
So, these are the things that we do at Awe. We do that with our AI companions, chatbot, chat coaches, actually.
Mhm,
Again, evidence based AI, ethical AI. You can check
mhm.
them on our site, awedigitalwellness.com. There is Lumi. Go try it out. We're almost at 1,000 users now. So very good feedback. And Lumi has a voice. We've invented Lumi and invited Lumi as well on the podcast. It can write and respond in many languages, and
Mhm.
now it can also talk. So go ahead and check it out. So Awe is embedded in the framework of Lumi, so it can help you do that and not do that just interacting with them. Prompt you to go out and do it in the world, to call your brothers, to look at beautiful snow, to talk and laugh with your colleague, like we're doing now, to research with curiosity, which is also awe is linked to curiosity, and we're also doing this in our resets, right? So we have a Patreon for our members, and people can experience free or paid membership to have guided awe experiences, right? So it's relatively new science. It's not what anything everyone else are doing, but we are one of the few companies incorporating awe in our audio, in our AI, to help people experience that and have real connections in a community, in their life, and also digitally if they have to use that
Yeah.
temporarily between things, right? So the last point in here talks about. You might want to read it, Mark.
The pink part.
Yeah.
So it says 18th century philosophers such as Edmund Burke and Immanuel Kant considered awe important, and they talked about its bonds with the supreme. Awe tends to be elicited by the vast and expansive. Um, when they say supreme, they're probably referring to a higher power.
Yeah, so this goes to spirituality, and you don't have to be religious. And the idea is that we are self-centered, and we can think of off something that will lessen our ego
Uh-huh.
and help us connect with humanity and also with nature and the universe. So when we're talking about real connection, we can and should connect with the communities and people, and we can also connect with non-human, non-living things. We can connect with animals, we can connect with plants, we can connect with rocks. I'm doing some study now on indigenous relationality that talks about not seeing understanding the Western concept of when we think indigenous thinks of nature as spirits. It's not actually the case, because indigenous have a different language, and their language is more verb prone. So in English, French, German, we have more nouns and subjects, and verbs are kind of connecting
Mm.
a subject and a noun. And in indigenous culture, it's more verbs, so it's more action, it's more doing, it's more being,
Hmm.
right? So when they say spirit, they don't mean the tree really has a spirit. They mean there's a verb that can connect you to that tree, so it's a relationship, right? So you can learn from a tree, you can interact with a tree. It's not a real thing, it's not a supernatural being. It's just that there is some connection that can be made at a deeper level, right? So that's what we mean when we talk about connection. First, connect with yourself, be okay. Then connect with other, which will help you connect with yourself. And then connect even vaster and find awe in how big the universe is, how bigger than just you, me, or cousins, or a company, or community, or even our country is. We're way bigger than that. And when
Mm.
you feel that connection embodied in you, then you don't feel lonely anymore. Then you want to communicate and connect with people.
Yeah, I think that's what's missing in the culture is, we got rid of religion so quickly, and then we realized there was this empty void and we don't know what to fill it with. And so we fill it with political ideology or other markers of identity that make us feel unique. But that often just leads to more conflict. So I think I often say that people in church, they seem happier on average, right? And I think it's that sense of community that they get every Sunday when they come together and they break bread and all these things, and they're very kind towards each other. Um,
We
I
still
don't
have a Sunday meeting at awe, but it's not a religious thing.
it's not a religious thing.
It's just to get together.
All hail Christian. All hail
And
yes.
we tried to have fun and jokes. And yeah, we have two, three more quotes. I really enjoyed that paper again. Thanks to the authors. Really well done research. Here we talk about presence that is deeply connected to the self and others, right? So, how to find that connection. Presence is also one of the 8 P's in our happiness philosophy. presence is being right here, right now, with full attention, right?
Mhm.
So, and presence allow you to have that deep connection, right? If you're there, but you're doing some other things, you're preoccupied, you're looking at other things, you're not, looking someone's eyes, maybe even touching them as oxytocin is released by eye contact and touch. That's deeper connection than, yeah, I'm distracted, I'm here. We talked about fubbing, right? We did some videos about fubbing, which
Right.
means snubbing a person in the same room with your phone. That's not presence, and that's not deep connection.
Yeah. I think, people doing other things and thinking other thoughts and is just taking them away from actually appreciating the moment with that other person. Do you want me to read the second line?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So, death is a main consideration in existential thought. According to the Furman, in an existential thought, death awareness results in anxiety, which can be experienced in two different ways. And first one, overwhelming anxiety, and the second one, an energizing source that leads to live life fully as much as possible. Corey 2008 approaches it as a positive anxiety, energizing source, as it gives the meaning to the life in existentialist approach.
So,
Uh,
Mark, as an expert in attention and anxiety, how
yeah,
do you relate? We're talking about death, right? It's a
yeah,
Friday podcast. Should we
yeah,
be talking about death? Is it
death,
taboo? And yeah,
yeah.
you know,
Memento Mori, right?
yeah.
So, who was it? Nietzsche who wrote, "Remember your own death," right? Because it shouldn't be a source of dread, but it should be a source of remind yourself that this light is finite. It will end. Make the most of it. Make the most of it that you can, right? And that energizes people, that reframing of death, um, because you won't try to waste another day because you're like, "Oh, I only have so many days on this planet, and if I waste one, it's like, that's a wasted life," right? The second thing that I think of when I see this energizing, not death in the literal sense, but perhaps fear, right? Uh, Risk taking. Taking the risk actually excites a lot of people, right? The highs and the lows of an experience like investing in the stock market. Obviously, you're not dying, right? But if you see that your stocks in the stock market all of a sudden go down, you do feel like a certain fear response, right? And there is a risk taking involved in that. Not all things that, equate to death, but they do equate to some loss, right? And if the fear of loss, the avoidance of loss is what prevents us from taking the risk. But actually taking the risk in the first place, you'll realize that there's a new source of energy, a second brain, as Nassim Taleb calls it, that gets activated in that risk taking scenario. And it's what a lot of people avoid doing that because they're comfortable in their current space and they're afraid of the consequences of having taken a risk.
Very nice perspective and clear examples, Mark. This is something that I've been doing for years, decades now, being very conscious of not only my death, but people close around me. Uh, I know we'll talk about, you brought a book about Stoicism later, and Stoics prone people to actively prepare for death and remember that, and I've been doing some of those things, and it's very useful to have a more engaging life, a happier life, and also one with better, deeper connections, right? So one of the things that they suggest is to imagine your loved ones dying, which I used to do and still do sometimes with my son, right? And imagine that this moment is precious. He might pass away, I might,
Right.
and it's not morbid. It's just kind of to give that
Yeah.
perspective. And when we talk about relationship, might it be work relationship, family,
Mhm.
sisters, brothers, children, or your loved one, your romantic relationship?
Mhm.
What's the issues with couples? Most of them fight a lot, right? If you
Yeah.
remember that you might be not there the next day, maybe you'll be kinder. Maybe you'll say, well, maybe it's not worth. Like imagine that this is the last conversation I have with this person. Would it be the one that I want to have, or could I make a better one, right?
Right.
And people forget because they think they'll have 100 or 1,000 more conversation, but it might be the last one. And when you remember that, you'll take the time to listen more. You'll be more present, right?
How did how does that look like at a practical level? How do people remind themselves in a non-morbid sort of way every day that this is the only life you get, right? And that death is something that approaches everyone at one point or another.
To
People, yeah,
to
people
see it
might,
as a gift, to see it as a gift that you shouldn't take for granted, right? So it's gratitude, appreciation,
right?
and saying, "Hey, I get to spend this moment with this person."
How
That's
would how would you recommend, people will hear this podcast and they'll agree and they'll shake their head, but how do you recommend people really, you know, appreciate every single day any practical, like, visual reminders, right? Because it's easy for people to just fall back into the same patterns and habits,
that's what
right?
people do, and that's why we have, resources, right? We have coaches, we have AI,
Mhm.
we also have, books. So, I'm coming out with, a journal version of the 4 A's
Nice.
Awakening to Happiness. So that's a 4-month journey where each day and week you have some prompts and activities to do in the real world to make sure that you're
Mm,
cultivating acceptance, appreciation, and awe,
yeah,
and that it continues, right? It's not just, "I heard this podcast and I read this book and it's done."
right.
So we're giving practical tools, so that's gonna be available very soon. I'm finishing, it in the next weeks or 2. And right now we have a smaller resource, which is a one-page, daily 2-2-1 practice, which is 2 gratitude, 2 appreciation, and 1 admiration, right? Because admiration is also very good for relationship, and
Mhm.
admiration to other people leads to awe and vice versa. So all those things are practical tool, like you mentioned, Mark, not to just hear it and say, "Yeah, that's a good idea," and then go fight with your loved one, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So appreciating, somebody like your partner every day. My girlfriend's very good at this, just reminding me of what we should be grateful for and remind me that, hey, we're not in a car accident. We haven't been in a car accident.
Mhm.
We don't have cancer. I can walk. I'm in pretty good shape, actually. I still have both my parents, and I have a really loving family, right? All these things that, when we're focusing on what we're missing in our life, it's easy to forget those things as well.
We can go to the next part of the paper, and as we
Mhm.
do that, I'm gonna also share an interesting story talking about appreciation.
Yeah, yeah.
One of my and we can put full screen if you want, marketing team, as I tell the story. So there is this friend of mine. I went to meet her. I think it was 2-3 years ago during the pandemic that we talked about the restrictions, but just enough that we can go to a coffee one of those times. So she had a virtual funeral type of thing.
Oh, wow.
Um, so yeah, I've been to virtual weddings. There's all types of things that happen. I
Yeah,
hope that they don't do it anymore, but that was those were the times, let's say.
yeah.
Um, and I think there was also a physical one, and she's originally from the west coast of Canada, and then we're having coffee here in the East Coast in Montreal, and I was asking her, did you miss, being it virtually? Did you wanna go fly there? And she was, you know, s I had to give condolences to someone today, right? And depending on how you knew, so was that person important? Yeah, it was my grandfather. He was really important in my life.
Mhm.
And I was wondering, well, you don't seem sad at all. You like no signs of grief. Like, there's avoidance, there's different sides. We help people with grief as well. Might it be death that we can help you see that it's beautiful, and
Mhm.
also like breakups and other things that or losing job that are considered grief, big moments or loss. Um, but I was not helping her. She's my friend. We are just talking. And she explained to me, I feel very good that
Mm.
he's passed. I miss him, but for the last years I was in Montreal, I made sure to call him many times a week. I went to see him once in a while. Every conversation was good and connected. I have no regret. And why I know everyone dies, and every conversation was knowing that that's going to happen. So I was prepared. And I said, "Wow, like
Yeah,
that's a real example of someone who takes the concepts that we talk about and do it every day, right?"
yeah. Yeah, that kind of reminds me of when my grandma passed. It did happen quickly, but years she was dependent on my mom for support, and when it happened, I was just relieved, right, that she passed, and because I thought like, okay, she's no longer suffering, and my mom doesn't have to suffer by having to take care of her anymore, right? So I could see my mom was obviously mm, just really a mess after that, but I was relieved, after it happened. So there's just again different ways to frame an event in your life and to change the perspective on the events and the
Yeah,
meaning.
yeah, exactly. Thanks for sharing, Mark. And yeah, we can go back to a bit more of that science because I think there's a lot of gold nuggets here that we can share.
Yeah,
So this is, it talks again about not only losing the ego but transcending it, right? So it's not that we can really say that we can have no ego because we need ego for survival.
right.
Ego also helps us, uh, so survival, sex, the biological needs, and the ego is the default mode network, so it helps with creativity and other
Right.
things, right? But to transcend it means that we accept that it's there and that there's more, right?
So do you want me to I'll read this again.
The second part, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
read both. Go ahead.
Well, accordingly, transpersonal therapists put superficial explanations aside and try to find meanings that can transcend ego and settle a connection that between the client and the rest of humanity, the universe, and beyond. Um, Bonner and Friedman emphasize on the potential transit way to transcendent modes of being in awe experience, in which the contextual meanings go beyond their referential frames and limitations of the ordinary experience. In other words, awe experience provides a transfer from mundane daily life to the nature of existence to reach the optimal personal growth and development and increase capacity to transcendence provided by awe experience.
So again, we're going beyond the self.
Mhm,
We're reducing fear. We still need courage, but we're at least reducing fear,
mhm,
knowing that we're in this human experience, we're in this existence experience, and that we can have action beyond our small fear of self. How if we remember what we talked about, fear of being disliked, fear of being imperfect, those are all about the ego,
mm,
right? If the ego is not as important, it doesn't matter if they like the color of my shirt or if I my beer or my voice. Doesn't
mm,
matter. I'm here. How are you? Right.
right.
So yeah, those are the insight, and I think I have a last one to share, and then we'll go to other articles. Um, so experiential exercises, brainwave entrainment, hypnosis, and meditation are some of the ways that the paper mentions that you can create awe experiences. So we do meditation like, so we include meditation, breath work, oneness, awe experience specifically in our reset. So we're doing one of the ways that are evidence based to support awe experience. And the other ones are experiential, right? So just go out there. If you're listening to the podcast, you don't have to buy anything. You don't have to do anything. You don't even have to go to a reset or continue to listen to this podcast. Just go and experience awe right now. You can, and I'm doing it, talking to Mark, looking at the snow, having stories, sharing this, digging into science. I'm having awe right now. So you can too, right? And just it's the experience, it's not the knowledge.
Mhm,
So and hypnosis, we have in our board of consultant, one of the world leader of clinical hypnosis. He's a Canadian. He wrote books about it. If you want to know more about hypnosis, awe, and attention, we can help you as well. So we're really trying to find the real tools and practical applications to create connections and awe. And the last part you can read highlighted, and we can move on, Mark.
awe focuses the individual's attention on the here and now, but it also prompts the individual to think more self-transcendently, and it shifts the individual's focus from inner concerns to outer sense of universality and connectedness.
Connection once
Yeah.
again. so so thanks for that. And yeah, tell me more about your research, what you want to bring into the conversation as well.
Well, my research really was, I've read a few books on courage and fearlessness, and some perhaps, it's a good time to bring up the book that I had referenced today. So it's called "Courage is Calling" by Ryan Holiday. A lot of the people who listen to this podcast will be familiar with Ryan Holiday. He's a big stoic, big on stoic philosophy. "The Obstacle is the Way" is probably the most successful book, the most well-known book that he's written. Um, but he there's a few points in this book that I wanted to talk about really. Um, Oftentimes that we are afraid of things that are unlikely to happen, and we're also afraid of things that even if they did happen, we could handle. So the survivability of things, right? So this is what the Stoics actually called premeditatio malorum, which is the premeditation of evils. So what Holiday actually challenges readers to do in the book is to actually break down their fears into cold hard logic. Does the worst case scenario actually end your life, or it's just your comfort, right? And a lot of times it's just the comfort, right? It's not actual death, but we interpret it for some reason at a neurobiological level as death. And the biggest thing that I wanted to, that take from this book, right, is that courage is not like an innate skill. It's not like some people are born with courage and others aren't, but it's actually just a habit. It's a skill that's built over time, right? So everybody feels the fear, but some people decide to act despite the fear. And really, it's a form of micro courage is a small daily decision to speak up or try something new. And this can be done at any age, if you're 21 or if you're 42, whatever age you are, you can start building up courage, but it takes deciding on the person that you want to become and making decisions that align with that future version of yourself, right? So if you say, I want to be more courageous, it's not just reading a Holiday's book, but it's actually making decisions in your life that a courageous person would do. And almost as you were talking, I started thinking of the podcast that we did last week on ADHD, because I spoke for a brief moment about avoidance, right? And getting distracted and having this task. And essentially, to get out of the ADHD trap requires a bit of courage, right? Getting distracted, doing the thing that makes you uncomfortable, taking that leap of faith, right? It's easier said than done, but this thing can be built over time. So decide for yourself today, what is one little step that I can do, one little action that I can take that would make me a more courageous person, make me close the gap between where I am now and who I want to become.
Thanks so much for very practical advice. And I want to reemphasize for the audience, courage is a skill that anyone can build, right?
It's a skill, yeah. Because everybody feels that the fear. If fear is biological, it is innate. Everybody feels it, but courage is something that is not innate, meaning that people have certain experiences in their life that causes them to become more courageous, and habits build over time. They compound like interest. So if you decide today, I'm going to do something differently, I'm going to be a little more courageous, um, that's going to build over time, and it's going to keep building and building. So make it a point every day, right, to do something despite feeling the fear, right? And track it over time, measure it.
I love the poetic mark.
Yeah.
It compounds like interest. So we're doing financial advice as well, guys.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I copied that one from James Clear from Atomic Habits, so I can't trademark that quote. But yeah, no, essentially it does, right? And I think something else from Clear's book, at least, is that imagine one plane taking off in LA, if heading for New York, and then another plane changes. It's pointed a little bit to the south, but only by 1 degree, right? So essentially, in the beginning, it looks like they're traveling in the same direction, but one ends up in Washington, D.C., the other one ends up in New York, because over time, those paths start to diverge. So think of courage the same way, right? In the beginning, you might not see the tangible results that you desire, but over time, you'll become more and more of that person that you want to be.
And over time, you'll actually end up in Shanghai, even better.
Exactly. If you keep going, yeah. Very good.
I wanted to come back to one study that sorry, and if there's any other thing you want to share about this book, Mark.
No, no.
Yeah. Yeah, Ryan Holiday, shout out if you're listening. We've been listening to some of his work as well, doing quite well in understanding the Stoic, which we incorporate among
Hmm.
many other things in scientific and philosophical approach. But yeah, good book. I've read some of his books as well and listened to his podcast. So thanks for sharing, Mark.
Hmm. Of course.
Wanted to go to, we talk about building, right? So Barbara Fredrickson has a framework called broaden and build, right? So broaden and build theory, and it talks about the positive emotions that are generated through genuine social connections, right? So
Mm.
can you guess a few? I'm sure there is more, but tell me what you think that genuine social connection can create.
Positive emotions created by love. Love would be one of them.
Yep.
Um, connection's too broad, but happiness. Yeah,
So yeah,
happiness.
all of those are correct. Although love is a term that needs more defining in certain contexts. But here it talks specifically about social connection building lasting psychological, social, and intellectual capital. Right.
Mm,
So social connection helps you socially, but also cognitively and emotionally, psychologically. Right.
right.
So people can look at her theory a little bit more, but just wanted to highlight that social connection is a key to creating more happiness, as you mentioned, subjective well-being, health, and that it's also a primal need of human being. Right? We are biologically evolved to, if I would put Mark alone with no friends here in Montreal in the winter, he would probably not make it, right? And would enjoy every moment, memento mori, but would die, right? So
Right.
the way we can build cities and have books and work and survive in different environments, and even maybe go to the sky and build space station, is through collaboration. So that's built in our biology, and when you don't have those connections, you will not be happy. You will not be healthy. It will take
Yeah.
a toll on you.
Yeah, I almost think of, Yuval Noah Harari's book, I think the first one that
Sapiens.
Sapiens, yeah, yeah, he said that, um, Homo sapiens are the ones that survive. You had Neanderthals and you had Homo sapiens, but the difference between them was the ability of Homo sapiens to collaborate with each other based on abstract concepts like religion or the idea of money, that money has value. Neanderthals were very individualistic. They couldn't collaborate with each other. So even though the Neanderthal was much bigger and had a lot bigger muscles, it could kill one Homo sapien, even two, just in a match. But the Homo sapiens were able to come together and collaborate. Likewise, almost all amazing things in human history have come about because of collaboration, because of humans coming together to build something. Even when you think about the greatest people, the greatest entrepreneurs in human history, whether it's Elon Musk or Carnegie, Dale Carnegie, or all these people, is that they are not self-made. They had people around them who influenced them in a positive way to become the people that they were. So it's hard to become great in isolation. You have to go out, talk to people, do things, and collaborate with others.
Thanks for the perspective. Yes, we talked about great things, from the pyramids to the International Space Station, which my dad in Canada was able to collaborate, but it was a collaboration across the world. Years of preparation and doing to create one thing, one of the most difficult collaboration thing that humans ever did, and we're doing more and more, and we can do. And yeah, it's never one individual. Even if it's a famous writer, we can think of Shakespeare or whoever.
Mhm.
Still had families and friends and a context and people that allowed him to do that, and people that went to see his plays, and right.
Right.
So it's always a human endeavor that is never alone, and people that think they're going to be self-made and alone, and have 100 million people on Instagram
Yeah.
worship them, then maybe they should make a cult and not.
Yeah.
But even a cult, you need people, right? So yeah, thanks for that perspective. And I think that this ability of human is also a necessity, right? So we have to see it as a potential, but also as problematic if it's not met. Sorry.
Just making it a little bit lighter in here since I want people to see who I am. But yeah, no, I understand that this is a social need as well, the need for connection. And a lot of people just neglect it nowadays because they think they have this willpower, right? I've read all this books on self-help and I'm so good at willpower. It's like, no, like don't neglect that biological need, that innate need that everybody has.
So I wanted to also go back to social interaction and how difficult it can be, right? Fear, you need courage, and to help even difficult relationship. Maybe you want to deepen your existing relationship, but you find that person annoys you, or you're afraid of their reaction. And to have a better ability to connect with people in your community or close kin is also to bring this other concept. We have connection in one of the 7P, we have courage, which is one of the 7Cs, and we also have um, community, which we talked about in terms of 13 C's. But I want to focus on the ability. Sorry, guys. I want to focus on compassion, right? So,
Yeah.
compassion is one way when you're talking to someone else to bring your mindset and attitude with that of compassion, meaning, even if that person is bothering me or not saying this or ridiculing me, I can have compassion because I understand that they are perhaps suffering. That's their
Mhm.
environment. And I want to meet them where they are, right? And I want to talk about Fromm's definition of respect, because a lot of people talk about respect. And I had a long time debates with so many people and saying, I don't like the word respect. I think respect is too subjective. What's
Mhm.
respectful in one culture or one moment is different.
Mhm.
What's legal in one year is not legal the other day. How do you define respect? And I love this definition of respect, which is: respect means the ability to see a person as they truly are, to be aware of their unique individuality, and to care that they grow and unfold as themselves.
Hmm. That's beautiful.
Right.
I like that.
So if you want to build better relationship, maybe use this or a variation of this definition of respect,
Mhm.
and try to see person the way they are. Use compassion if you're not sure exactly what that is yet. Just
Yeah.
assume that it's complicated and you can have compassion and wish them to flourish as a human being. I think that's a
Mm.
great way to see things.
No, I think, it also the effect not just on the other person, but on yourself, right? As you said before, but experiencing compassion and the desire for others to succeed, um, isn't this what they call like metta in Buddhism when you are wishing well upon others? And
Yeah.
this actually, and I think Dr. K talks about this on his podcast, Healthy Gamer, is that this is a way for people to help activate their own focus is by just wishing well onto other people and people that you love, right? Seeing them flourish actually has a profound effect on one's own well-being, right?
Yeah. And it is just the wish for people to, right? Even if
Mm,
it doesn't happen, just to have that wish helps them and also yourself in the meantime, right?
100%.
And the other, mention of Alder's philosophy, German, is and perhaps Mark can correct me, Gemeinschaft, which is social interest or community feeling.
Can you say it again?
Gemeinschaftsgelft.
Gemeinschafts uh yeah, okay. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
No, the accent was good.
Gemeinschaft.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of the recognition of our fundamental interconnectedness, and
Yeah.
it's a feeling of being in community, right? So
Mm,
we're talking about not just one interaction to another, one real connection, but a connection to the whole community, and
right.
to want to contribute in a community level, which could be as high as the community as humanity, but
Mhm.
more than two people. And that is, I think, the beginning of finding bonds that are deeper, realer, that
100%.
include people where they are, and
Mm,
includes their thoughts, their emotions, their well-being, their worries, their fear, and that can also build collective courage, collective action.
absolutely. Yeah, 100% agree.
Any other thoughts on connection, courage you want to share?
I think once people do it, they'll realize why did it take me so long to initiate this contact with. They'll be like, "This is so easy," right? But again, it's just taking that first step that seems the hardest for people.
Just a few other studies we won't go into, but our experiences are consistently our experiences are consistently rated as among the most meaningful moments of people's lives
Mhm.
and make them feel happier. That's Lee et al. 2019, and Piff et al. 2015 talks about our experiences making people again less centered and more pro-social and attentive to their needs. Right. So definition of respect: meeting people where they are, finding awe, and not being so self-centered. This is easy ways, if you practice them, to find real connections in your daily lives. It
Beautiful.
also, you know, I'll release some beta endorphins, so it
Yep.
makes you feel less pain, and it also deactivates the sympathetic fear response, which
Oh, okay.
makes again less fear, right?
Less
So
fearful by
yeah,
practicing all. Yeah.
so hope this was a wonderful podcast.
Yeah.
I
Maybe,
enjoyed this immensely with you, Mark.
yeah, maybe should we open up the floor for any questions? If anybody has questions, feel free to drop it in the chat right now. We can address that in the chat. Any questions that come up about courage or about connection or anything else that perhaps that we touched upon in previous podcasts, feel free to ask in the chat. Yeah,
Oh,
Christian. Mm,
I almost forgot. There was another book that we can mention
yeah,
briefly
please,
if you
please.
want.
Yeah, yeah. Play.
um, Again, this is a book from Dr. Stuart Brown that
There we
talks
go.
about play, right? So, play, how it shapes the brain, opens the imagination, and invigorates the soul.
Yeah.
No comments on the soul part, but let's just talk about creativity and play and connection. Another way to connect, right? If you feel that you're not so good at speaking, or not so good at communicating yet, or actively listening, just go play. That's a form of connection, right?
Yeah.
Take the time to play with a kid, play with an adult, make jokes, send some memes if that's the only way you can play. But
Yeah.
make something worthwhile, preferably in person. But even if it's virtual, make it playful, and that's the way that brings deeper connection. I know Mark has so many jokes about me now, and our connection is deep.
What it like, are there opportunities for adults to play nowadays? Like, kids have playgrounds, right? But when is it that adults can really play besides sports?
Yeah, and sport is a form of play, but it's also structured play. So
Yeah.
it's also suggested to create environments of even more
Mm,
unstructured play, more freedom. But sports, board games, or structured play, they're also
mhm,
fun. And so this book, and based on research, actually it was 6,000 play histories that were
mm,
collected throughout the years. And some interesting finding is that play deprived individuals um, showed markedly deficient uh, play histories, right? So if you have not enough play in your life, there's more chances that you are antisocial, which is connection. There's more chance that you commit crime. Um, it's actually, play brings greater resilience, creativity, mental health, and logic. So I suggest everyone play this weekend.
Yes.
If you want to play with us, we have communities
Mhm,
at Odd that would love to play and engage. Reach out
mhm.
to us on our social medias.
Yes.
Again, LinkedIn and our website, awdigitalwellness.com. We also have a new website, awwellness.org.
Mm.
Reach us there. And any last word, Mark?
All it takes is one step, guys. Make a micro decision to be more courageous today, especially after you end this podcast.
Thanks, Mark. Always a pleasure.
Likewise.
Thanks
See
all
you
the
guys
listeners.
next
Bye.
time. Bye-bye.